Hello everyone. Let's review Shloka 58 in Lalita Sahasranamam. chatuḥśhaśhṭyupachārāḍhyā chatuśhśhaśhṭi kaḻāmayī mahā koṭi yoginī gaṇasevitā. Let's look at the meanings. chatuḥśhaśhṭyupachārāḍhyā. So chatuśhśhaśhṭi means 64. Upacharam means offerings. So chatuḥśhaśhṭyupachārāḍhyā means one who is worshipped with 64 offerings. So what are these 64 offerings? Actually, this nama points to the rituals we do when we do puja for the god. So there are many offerings depending upon the puja that we do. At the minimum, we can do panchopacharam, which is 5 upacharas, or there is shada upachara, which is 6 upacharas, or shodasa upachara, which is 16 offerings. There is also a dasa upachara, which is 10 offerings, and then chatuḥśhaśhṭyupachārāḍhyā, which is 64 offerings. So if you think about any puja you do at home, like a Varalakshmi Vritam or Swarna Gauri Vritam or Ganesha Puja, anything like that, there are offerings in that puja. Typically, the pujas that we do at home, maximum we do 16, minimum 5, maximum 16. The 64 offerings are usually done in the temple. So what are the 5 offerings at the minimum we do when we do it at home? It is Gendam, Pushpam, Dhupam, Deepam, Naivedyam. Gendam is anything fragrant, and it could be Sandanam, Kumkumam, all of those are called as Gendam. Pushpam is flower, Dhupam is incense, Deepam is the Deepa Jyoti. With oil and wick, we light a lamp and we show that to God. And then Naivedyam is the offering of food. So any simple puja will have these 5. And then for the 10, we can add Padyam, Argyam, Achamaniyam, Madhuparkam and Punarachamaniyam. So Padyam means washing the god's feet, Argyam means giving water to wash the hands or palm, and then Achamaniyam is giving water to purify oneself, and then Madhuparkam is giving honey, and then Punarachamaniyam is cleansing again. And then in bigger pujas at home, like a Varalakshmi Vritam, then we'll do Shodasa Upachara, which also, in addition to the 5 and the other 5 I said, that that's Upachara, we could add Asanam, Snanam, Vastram, Alankaram, Nirajanam, Namaskaram. All these are also offerings. So as you can see, all these 16 offerings are about making God, who is a guest in our house, feel comfortable. Generally in all these pujas, that's how it goes. It's like we welcome God into our house, and because God has come, we do all these offerings just to show how much we like her. And in the temples, if you see, there are 64 offerings, and these offerings start early in the morning. It starts with the Suprabhatam, singing songs to wake up the god, and then they give a twig to for the god to brush his teeth, and then there is giving sandals so that the god can go take bath, and then all the different abhishekams, right? The abhishekam with milk, abhishekam with sandalwood placed, abhishekam with curd, honey. There are so many abhishekams, and then they go all the way up to the night, which include preparing the god's bed and giving a massage to the god and making sure God has gone to sleep. So there are all these offerings throughout the day, and those are 64 offerings. And in Sri Vidya tradition, there is a Navavarana Puja, which is a puja with the Sri Chakra, and it worships the 9 enclosures of the Sri Chakra. In that, there is also 64 offerings. So these are all provided to the god. So she is someone who's worshipped with those 64 offerings in the pujas we do for her. So then, does God look for these 64 offerings? Is that how we are supposed to worship God? Is this how God will be pleased? The answer is in Bhagavad Gita. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, if one offers to me with devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or even water, I delightfully partake of that item offered with love by my devotee in pure consciousness. So that's what Krishna says, which means we can offer 64 offerings. We can do 5, we can do 10, we can do 16, 64. But the most important ingredient in all of those, it is not how many or exactly what we are offering. It is the love with which we are offering. So it is not about the material value of our offering. Rather, what God values above everything else is the love with which we make the offering. So let's take a look at a small story that kind of illustrates this. So once upon a time, there was a Pallava king. His name is Rajasimha. It's also called as Narasimhavarman II. And this Rajasimha is an ardent devotee of Shiva. He really likes Shiva. And one day it occurred to him that he should build a grand temple for Shiva. And he also decided there cannot be any other temple like this, right? It should be the best temple, nothing like this before. Being a king, obviously he has a lot of wealth, and therefore he was able to go get the best architects, the best tapati, the best priests, and those who are well versed in building a temple who could advise him. So quickly plans were drawn and the work started. And the work was taking shape, and this temple exists even today. This is called as Kailasanadar temple, and it is in Kanchipuram. And some of you may be thinking, usually when we say big temple for Shiva, a grand temple for Shiva, people generally think Brihadishvara temple. So this temple was built 300 years before Brihadishvara temple, and it's also said to be one of the inspirations for that temple. So the Kailasanadar temple work is progressing very well. It's taking shape and it's turned out really well. If you look at the temple, it has granite foundation. All the carvings are with sandstone. There are several praharams. And then just before you can go to the main shrine, there are like 8 shrines. And then there are 56 sub-shrines in the compound wall of the main shrine. It is amazing. The sculptures there, nobody has ever seen something like this. So this temple is taking shape in a grand way. Now, Rajasimha consulted his priest and they all decided, let's do the Kumbhabhishekam for this temple. So they set a date and said, on this particular day, we'll do the Kumbhabhishek. So that's the installation of the god there. So everybody is very happy. All the work is progressing very well. One night, the king was sleeping, and suddenly in his dream, Shiva came, and Shiva told him, the date on which you set your Kumbhabhishekam will not work for me. I can't come to your temple. Another devotee of mine called Pusalar is building a grand temple for me, and he set the Kumbhabhishekam on the same day. So I'm going to go for that temple. So the king, next day morning when he woke up, he was really surprised. He was thinking, is this dream real? How come I heard all this? But things were a bit specific. They said another devotee called Pusalar is building this temple for me. So the king came to the court and he decided to ask all his ministers, does anybody know a person called Pusalar? And I heard that he's building a grand temple. So then people said, we don't know who Pusalar is. But there is no grand temple. The only grand temple is yours. There has never been a temple like this. So no, we don't know of anybody else building a temple. At that point, somebody in the court said, no, there is a person called Pusalar, lives in a place called Tirunendravur, but I have also not heard of any grand temple being built. So then now the king had something to go by, right? He has the name of the person. Now he knows where he lives, and that person is real. So the Tirunendravur was pretty close from where the king was. So he said, okay, let's go look at it. So he went along with his army and they all went to Tirunendravur. And everybody was pleased to see the king come to their village. And then he asked the people in the village, I heard that there is a grand temple being built here. And so the villagers were all very surprised. They said, no, we don't know of any grand temple being built. We haven't heard about anything. Then the king asked, is there a person called Pusalar in this place? They said, yeah, he lives here. And he said, I heard that he's building the temple. And then they all said, no, Pusalar lives here and his house is in the outskirt of this village. If you go this side, you can go to his house, but we don't know of any big temple he is building. So the king decided, let me go talk to Pusalar himself. So he went with his army to Pusalar's house and he knocked on the door, and Pusalar's wife opened the door. And obviously, she was very surprised to see the king at her doorstep. So she invited the king in, and then the king said, are you Pusalar's wife? And she said, yeah, I'm Pusalar's wife. And he asked her, is your husband building a grand temple? Can you show me where the temple is? Now, this lady got really surprised. She said, I don't know of any grand temple he's building. Now, the king is a little bit confused. Everybody says there is a person called Pusalar, but there is no grand temple he's building. But it did come in his dream, and he felt like Shiva was saying that. So then he said, can I speak to your husband? So the lady said, yeah, totally, you can speak to him. In fact, I've been very worried about him. For the last 3 months, he's been locked in that room and he doesn't come out at all. Sometimes I see him crying, sometimes I see him very ecstatic. So I don't know what's happening to him. So then the king went to the room where Pusalar was. And when Pusalar saw the king enter the room, he got up, and greeted the king. So the king then asked Pusalar, I heard that you're building a grand temple. Is that true? And then Pusalar said, yes, I'm building a grand temple. So then the king said, can you please show me that big temple? Because I was planning to build a grand temple. It's taken great shape and it looks excellent. And but Shiva came in my dream and said that he cannot come to my Kumbhabhishekam, rather he wants to come to your Kumbhabhishekam. So I would like to know how big a temple it is and what have you built that would make Shiva want to come to your temple and not mine. So the king is really interested in understanding that. So then Pusalar tells the king, please give me your hand. So the king extends his hand and Pusalar takes the king's hand and places it on his heart, on Pusalar's heart. So initially the king cannot feel anything, but slowly through his hands he can feel a vibration. He is able to hear the chanting. He can see that there is a temple that is ongoing there. So at that point, the understanding dawns on the king. Pusalar was building a temple, a grand temple for Shiva within his heart. Pusalar always wanted to build a grand temple, but he is a poor person and therefore he didn't have the funds. So instead, he's been designing this temple, he's been building it brick by brick within his heart, and he's made all arrangements and he was going to install the god there. So that's when Rajasimha realized what a great devotee Pusalar is. And look at Shiva. There was not even a physical building. And he had nothing to prove to other people. Yet Shiva was able to see the temple that Pusalar was building in his heart. So it is not about whether the temple had granite stones or sandstone and carvings and all that. And nothing wrong in the king wanting to build something like that. But more important than all of that is the devotion with which that is being offered. And Pusalar, for many, many months, every single day has been single-mindedly invested in building this temple and has designed it. And Shiva appreciated that love for him, the devotion for him, and that's why he chose to go to Pusalar's temple, Kumbhabhishekam. So Rajasimha realized what a great devotee Pusalar is. So Pusalar is one of the Nayanmars and he is called Pusalar Nayanar. And to appreciate that devotion, Rajasimha actually built a temple for Shiva in Tirunendravoor that all Pusalar always wanted to build, and that is called as Hridayalishwarar temple. So that still exists. So that is the one of the examples of saying it is not the material value of what we are offering. It is not even how many we are offering. It is the love with which we offer. That's what God considers as foremost amidst anything else. A very similar story in Mahabharata. So Krishna came as the messenger of the Pandavas to Duryodhana's palace. So at that time, Krishna did not want to stay in Duryodhana's house or Duryodhana's palace. it seemed inappropriate when you come as a messenger to go and take all the upacharams offered by the other party. So Krishna wanted to stay somewhere else. At that time, Bhishma said, Krishna, please come to my house. And then there was Dronacharya, Kripacharya, everybody said, Krishna, come to my house, Krishna, come to my house. And then at that time, Vidura was there, and Vidura is a jnani. He knows who Krishna is. So then Vidura said, Krishna, this entire universe is yours. There is no place that's not yours. So then there is nothing that is my house. Krishna, whatever I have is yours. So my house is your house. You can always come and stay in your house. You don't need anybody to invite you to come to your own house. So it's your own house. You can come and stay. So Krishna was very pleased, and so Krishna went to Vidura's house. And Vidura's wife is an ardent devotee of Krishna, and she was at home and she saw Krishna and she was like very happy that Krishna showed up to her house. But she wasn't expecting any visitors, so she did not have any food at home. And Krishna said, I'm very hungry, please give me something to eat. So at that time, all they had was a lot of bananas. So immediately Vidurani decided that she was going to give bananas to Krishna because he's very hungry. So she made Krishna sit down, and then she sat at his feet and started to peel each banana and give it to Krishna. And in her exuberance and this devotion and being so happy, she was throwing the banana away and giving the peel to Krishna. Krishna was also taking all of that. And then at some point, Vidura came inside and he saw that his wife was giving the peel, banana peel, and not the banana. So he was going to stop Vidurani. At that time, Krishna said, no, no, she's giving it to me with so much love and devotion. So the peel tastes better than the banana. So this is what is important whenever we worship God. It is not how we worship, and following the rituals is good because they bring a discipline, but more important than the rituals are the bhavana, the attitude with which we approach God, and the bhakti, the devotion, the 100% faith and complete devotion towards God. And that state is called charanagati. And when we have that and we surrender ourselves to God, then God always blesses us and protects us. So chatuḥśhaśhṭyupachārāḍhyā is one who is worshipped with 64 offerings. Chatuśhśhaśhṭi kaḻāmayī. Chatuśhśhaśhṭi again is 64. Kala means arts. She is the embodiment of the 64 arts, or she is the essence of all the 64 arts. So what are the 64 arts? Singing, dancing, wrestling, cooking, rangoli. There is a long list, even making puzzles. Those are all called as arts. And she is the essence of all the arts. It is said that when the 4 Vedas came into existence, the Vedas are supposed to help human beings achieve liberation. That's why they were created with that intent by the gods. But even the 4 Vedas were very complicated. It was not easy for a normal human being to easily understand that. So at that time, the gods were thinking, we have to create another Veda, something that is tangible, that can be easily understood by human beings, so they can use that as a path for the moksha. And that's when they called Bharata Muni, and Natyam came into existence. So Natyam is also, so he created the Natya Shastra, and Natyam is also called as Panchama Veda, because Natyam allows us to involve ourselves in there, and therefore we are able to achieve that same liberation just like you would if you had understood Veda, etc. So all the arts are like that. So the arts are also a means of us being able to create that single-minded devotion that's needed to achieve liberation. And that's why if you see in Hindu culture, if it is music, it sings praise of God. If it is dance, we depict all the scenes from the stories in the mythology. So everything that we do, whether we do rangoli, then we do that in front of God, right? Muggu or kolam is always done in front of God. If we cook, then we offer that as prasadam. So everything is infused with bhakti, because that is the way everything is infused with the God, because these arts are also a means for us to achieve the liberation. And actually, art without the bhakti can become actually detrimental. Arts always, they're all skills, right? They're capabilities. Somebody can sing well, somebody can dance well. And these could very easily, when we can do something well, they can very easily become part of our identity, and therefore they can feed to the ahankara, and therefore can result in a situation where we have garvam out of it. And as long as we have garvam, we can never let go of ahankara. That pride will lead to an identity. And as long as we identify ourselves separately, then we can never realize the oneness with the ultimate reality. So if we approach art without the bhakti, then it could become one of the reasons for us to stay in this samsara and continue to have this lack of clarity or be under the effect of maya. That's why Tyagaraja says, Sangeeta Jnanamu Bhakti Vina Sanmargamu Galade. So understanding music without bhakti, or having knowledge of music without bhakti, will not result in the right path, will not take us in the right path. So we can learn all the swaras and everything, but if we don't have the bhakti, then that Svarajnanam only is going to add to our garbam. So she is the essence of that, all the 64 arts, and bhakti allows us to tap into that essence and therefore use that as a path to achieve that liberation. Mahā chatuśhśhaśhṭi koṭi yoginī gaṇasevitā. So, mahā chatuśhśhaśhṭi koṭi. So, chatuśhśhaśhṭi again is 64. Koṭi means 1 crore. Yoginī are all the attendants of Lalita. So, gaṇasevitā. So, she is someone who is attended to by 64 crore yoginis. That's what that line means. Mahā chatuśhśhaśhṭi koṭi yoginī gaṇasevitā. Someone who's attended to by 64 crore yoginis. There are 2 stories associated with it. One is in the Shumba Nishumbha Vada. It is said that Mahā Saraswati came as Kaushiki, and then when the battle became very intense, then Kaushiki created Ashtamatrikas, 8 Ashtamatrikas, and then each of those Ashtamatrikas in turn created 8 yoginis. So 8 times 8 is 64 yoginis, and each yogini had 1 crore yoginis supporting her. So therefore it is 8 times 8 times 1 crore. That's how 64 crore yoginis came. And these 64 crore yoginis fought with the Asura army, and they were able to kill all the Asuras and win the war. So 64 crore yoginis comes from that particular story. And also there is one other interesting thing about this Mahā chatuśhśhaśhṭi koṭi yogini gaṇasevitā. So there was a person called Bhaskara Raya. He is one of the greatest devotees of Lalita, and he is almost an authority on all things related to the Shakti worship. And he has written many books. In fact, one of his books called Saubhagya Bhaskara, which is a commentary on Lalita Sahasranamam, is considered the absolute book on Lalita Sahasranamam. It's the best bhashyam ever. So, Saubhagya Bhaskara is a very good book, authoritative source for Lalita Sahasranama explanation. So, Bhaskara Raya is such a great devotee. And, for someone to be able to write all of this, the devotion to Lalita must be extreme. So, at one point in time, he was living in Kasi. And, Kasi is a city with lots of scholars. So, Bhaskara Raya was there. But there were some other scholars who were very jealous of Bhaskara Raya. They thought, oh, what big deal. He writes lots of books. It's as if he only knows everything about Shakti. Are we all not devotees of Shakti? How good is this guy? This is all simple hype. There are people who are thinking like that. But Bhaskararaya is a true devotee. He is not doing this for Garbam. He is just doing it because he is interested in the liberation, and he is truly fond of Lalita. So one day Bhaskararaya was making a yaga. So he conducted a yaga and he invited all the scholars in Kasi. And so the scholars who were jealous of him found that as a good chance. They thought, okay, this is a big yaga that he is conducting. In the yaga, we will ask him questions, bring out his lack of knowledge, and therefore embarrass him. That was their plan. So they all went to the yaga, and in the pretext of asking him or learning more, they asked him, Bhaskararaya, can you please give explanations of Lalita Sahasranama namas? There is one nama we want to understand better. Can you please explain the meaning? So Bhaskararaya said, okay, fine. What is the nama? They said, mahā chatuḥśhaśhṭi koṭi yoginī gaṇasevitā. So then Bhaskararaya said, oh yeah, that means that she is attended to by 64 crore yoginis. So then someone got up and said, can you please name all the 64 crore yoginis? And you can imagine now, first of all, this is 64 crores. How long will it take to say all of this, even if you know? Second, to know 64 crore yogini names is a big task. Nobody can memorize like that. It's a very hard task. But it is said that he had the complete blessing of Lalita. So Lalita came and stood behind him, and she had ordered all these 64 crore yoginis to come and whisper their name and characteristics in his ears. So that way, the 64 yogini, one by one, they all came, said their name, and they whispered their characteristics, and Bhaskararaya was saying this out loud to the audience. And so it was going on and on and on, and he never seemed to stop. For the people who wanted to embarrass him, now they are stunned that first of all he knows so much, and then it's gone on for more than 2 weeks, and now they realize that he is really blessed by Lalita, and they accept that only someone who has so much devotion towards Lalita can gain that blessing. So they all acknowledge his devotion, and therefore they ask him to stop and say, very, very sorry, we intended to embarrass you, but you truly are deserving of that blessing of Lalita. So that was an interesting story I came across, and I thought I would share with all of you. That's all for today. Thank you.